Hey, welcome to the Green Beret Life. This is Matt. As you can see, we don't have Stu tonight. Stu had something to do, so you guys got me and me alone. Now, I'm trying to do this all by myself here. And Stu usually sets up the chat and everything for this whole thing. He sets up the whole thing, to be honest with you. But I want to make sure that we are live on Rumble and all of this. Oh, boy. We're having trouble on Rumble. Oh, my goodness. Oh, here we go. Right off the bat. So I'm going to try to get everybody. I'm going to try to get everybody to sign into YouTube here on Rumble. Sorry, guys. Bear with me. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Well, I don't know why it's not broadcast. Bear with me, guys. All right, I'm trying to get in to Rumble and get you guys over to YouTube. And the majority of our viewers watch on Rumble. So what a freaking mess. Oh, boy. What a freaking mess. Well, we're going to move on with the show here on YouTube. I don't know what's going on Rumble. I'm really upset because, like I said, the majority, we push everybody to Rumble. We're live on Odysee. We're not operating on Rumble. I don't know why. Bullshit. So, of course, I don't have any emails from Rumble. Of course, I don't. I can't even comment on Rumble. What is going on? Hey, Troy, if you can hear me, can you tell everybody back at Rumble to come here? I can't even leave comments on Rumble. I don't know what's going on with it right now. It's jammed shut. Thanks, Troy. Tell everybody to come over here. We'll just broadcast it on YouTube. Going to give a few minutes for people to show up over here. Thanks for Troy. Thank God for Troy commenting here on YouTube, figuring something might be going down, that Rumble isn't working. This is just typical for the show, as you guys probably know, and it's my fault. I should be more technically savvy with this. So when Stu's away, I should be able to react to this, but I don't know what in the hell is going on with Rumble. So we're going to broadcast here. I'm going to give a few minutes for people to come back over here or go to Odysee, and then I guess we'll just go from there. So anyways, we got a good show tonight. There's 3 topics I'm going to cover. I'm probably not going to be around here for super long. As you can see, I have a little bit better thanks, Troy. I appreciate that. A little bit better reception here, so I can broadcast from the middle of the North Woods up here. So basically what we're going to talk about tonight is, it's been a while since I've done one of these by myself, but what we're going to talk about over here, we're going to talk about the pipe bomber, the January 6th pipe bomber. We're going to talk about the ending of the shutdown and what not a lot of people are talking about. Some of the stuff that Trump did that I think brought about the end of the shutdown. And then another small topic we're going to talk about is Mexican gangs and cartels are putting a bounty on ICE agents' heads. We need to talk about that a little bit too. So I'm going to give a few moments here. Hopefully we'll get some more people over here. I apologize for this nonsense at the beginning of this show, but I'm just going to jump right into January 6th. Or actually, let's talk about the shutdown first. I'm going to talk about the shutdown first. Okay. As all of you probably know at this stage, the shutdown, which lasted 40 days and was the longest in U.S. history, was ended. And the reason why it was ended is we had 8 Democrat senators who are not, by the way, up for re-election next election cycle, 2026. 8 Democrat senators basically abandoned the Democrats and came over because they saw what was going on, what a mess this was. And I think in order to figure out why they did this, you have to dig a little deeper and understand that there is kind of a civil war going on within the Democrat Party right now between the establishment, and I will say those are the Chuck Schumer types, right? And this new radical Marxist group that is basically putting all of the pressure, that has the radical element within the major metropolitan areas, the whole woke crowd, Antifa types, the people who basically make up the fringe, the trans rights, the pro-Palestinian, anti-American crowd, right? So the reason why the shutdown was probably brought by the Democrats, even though basically what they did is they went back on everything they agreed to initially to keep the government going, several months ago. They were going to demand that we provide health care for illegals. They wanted permanent Obamacare subsidies. They wanted something like $1.5 trillion in new spending, right? Something like along those lines, right? And what the real goal of the shutdown was to get Trump's base to turn against him, right? Because you look, they have the media, they have entertainment, they have the media, they have education, they have a lot of the in-place government institutions. They can push the propaganda pretty hard. And this is what they felt they would do. They would create the narrative, despite what the true narrative was, as they often do. They would push the narrative. So initially, they wanted to get people all upset because they wanted military personnel to not get paid. And this is a big chunk of Trump's base, right? And another big chunk of Trump's base supports the military. So if you get to the point where there's pain in the ranks of the military, they wanted that to transfer to Trump. So you either, provide this new $1.5 trillion in new spending, healthcare for illegals, permanent Obamacare subsidies. Obamacare has destroyed, this is just a side note, our insurance here in the United States, our health insurance. Since Obamacare took place, I heard a statistic, and I need to do a little more information into this, but the profits and the value of the insurance companies has gone up 1,000% since Obamacare was placed into power. No wonder all of these insurance companies were for Obamacare, right? No wonder AARP was for Obamacare, because the deep state, the left, the establishment knows how to push something, because it's all on the back of the taxpayer eventually, right? And if you can get these corporations to partner with you with the promise of a huge payout, yes, Troy, you're 100%. Everything is Trump's fault, right? That's the narrative they were going to push, even though they created all of this. It was going to be Trump's fault. That's what the media was going to push. That's what all the newspapers. That's what all of these. Nobody listens to Hollywood or that crowd anymore, but that's what they were going to push. You're going to see the shows on TV pushing it, like the Jon Stewarts and all of that, right? Which they were, but it wasn't effective because the American people are now educated. But a chunk of the American people are educated, right? But they wanted to provide pain. They wanted the pain of the American soldier not getting paid. They wanted ICE agents to just quit the job because they're scared to death of how effective they are at getting illegals out of this country, because that is their voter base. You've been replaced by illegals. That's what they were brought here for. Bring them in, give them everything, get them all lined up to where, the government is their daddy, the benefactor, right? And then get them, do a mass amnesty. That's comprehensive immigration reform, right? All that sounds good to the general public. And then now you have a whole new voting bloc that'll keep the Democrat establishment and the radical wing of the Democrats in power over your life as they continue the destruction of our country and the Western world, quite frankly, because you're watching it happen in Europe, right? So they wanted the pain to the military. They wanted ICE agents to up and quit because they weren't getting paid, right? Then you saw the whole EBT. Now they were going to let Trump take the blame for the EBT if they could push that long enough, and then they were going to provide a little bit of relief for that, right? Which Trump blocked, right? So what got these 8 Democrat senators, right, to jump on board? The shutdown that was designed to hurt Donald Trump made Donald Trump even stronger. Okay, it made him even stronger. So right off the bat, it's an absolute failure, right? They're not doing this for the benefit of the country or even pushing for their own agenda. It's their agenda is the destruction and pain of the country. That's what it is, right? So this gave Trump an opportunity because now we're all looking, everybody's looking at everything that's going on, what's going on in Ukraine. They're saying Trump is spending so much time overseas, while a big chunk of the voting bloc that doesn't traditionally vote Republican, that voted for Trump on the issues of domestic issues, getting the economy back into shape, getting inflation down, getting the price of groceries down to a normal level, saving the purloining of American jobs and bringing jobs back to this country, right? Well, this shutdown enabled Trump to pivot back to domestic issues, okay? And he did it with 5 points. He did it with 5 points, right? And what he did to get some of those independents, and quite honestly, a bunch of us want to see Trump pay a lot more attention to domestic issues as well, right? Which Trump is trying to handle everything and has the whole world up against him. So we generally support Trump. I support him. I know you guys most likely support Trump as well, right? But the people who don't pay attention quite as much because they're working in life and everything else want to see Trump really narrow down on these domestic issues, right? So first thing are the tariffs. And there's another underlying deal with the Supreme Court looking at these tariffs. When you look at the tariffs, you have to understand who is against the tariffs, right? You see all these members of Congress against tariffs, the supposed business world against tariffs, right? All of these senators that are against tariffs, but who pulls their strings? I'm going to tell you, it's organizations like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, right? And the big behemoths like Walmart that rely on outsourcing jobs and getting cheap products from foreign countries. Be damned the American worker, right? That's who's really pulling the strings here. So when you hear a narrative, if you turn on NPR and you listen to, Trump's tariffs are causing inflation, it's complete bullshit. But that's the narrative they're going to push. And if you don't dig far enough, that makes a little bit of sense, right? So what Trump is doing with these tariffs is he is proposing a $2,000 check to everybody except the top earners, right? To get money back into Americans' hands. Because we've all been hurt by this. We've all been hurt from the 4 years of Biden. We have massive inflation. We have massive amounts of debt. We have a housing crisis, which we're going to touch on one of these points, right? The housing crisis is in part, big part of it, because we have tens of millions of illegals in this country that the government is housing using your taxpayer dollars. Yes, Troy's 100% right. Lobbyists and donors pull the strings of their puppets in Congress and in the Senate. We rail about this every week. People that are owned, bought, and paid for, that aren't working for their constituents. They're working for whatever entity controls them, whether it's the military-industrial complex, whether it is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, whether it's Big Pharma, whether it's any of them, right? The marriage between business and our government is a very, very dangerous marriage, okay? And the longer these individuals are allowed to stay in Washington, D.C., the more entrenched into that network they get. This is why term limits are so damn important. You're seeing Nancy Pelosi, who retired, who's going to retire this week. How did a public servant her whole life, how did they generate making 175, which is not chicken scratch, right? But how does somebody making 175 grand a year wind up worth upwards of $200+ million, right? We all know. We all know how that happened. And if you dig into the wealth of just about anybody in Congress, and it's not necessarily on just one side, it's on both sides, there's something very, very wrong. Very wrong. Okay? So getting back to this, he's going to do a $2,000 tariff dividend check, right? Now, between April and October, we've collected $151 billion in tariffs. And these were from countries that were screwing us before, that Everybody was the U.S. Chamber of Commerce crowd, allegedly, perfectly fine with, because they're able to bring their cheap products back into the country and sell it, right, and make a nice, handsome profit utilizing foreign labor, right, bypassing American labor, and bring it back in and say this is free trade. It's not free trade, right? So we took in 151 billion between April and October. There's an estimate for the year we're going to take in 500 billion. So this $2,000 tariff dividend check gets money back into the hands of citizens who've been screwed. High insurance rates, illegals out there crashing cars, right, and other things, and not having insurance to pay for it. So who pays for it? You do, in your insurance deductibles. You pay for it. You, the working stiff that funds this country, you're paying for it. So Democrats can import tens of millions of illegals to replace their voting base, to keep them in power, right? So the rest of that money is going to be used to pay down the debt. And I can't help but wonder if that's a shot across the bow of whoever is pushing this into the Supreme Court, because believe me, they should have never even took this. But can you imagine if they say that Trump doesn't have the authority to levy tariffs, and then it has to go all back to Congress? Do you think these congressional members are going to now say, give the $2,000 back, and then we're going to take that money out of what we were using to pay down the debt and send it back to these countries that were screwing us? Let's see them do that. Okay, that's just a little side point on what's going on. So the first point is you're going to get a $2,000 tariff dividend check, and the rest to pay off the debt. The second one, and this is the real backbreaker for the Democrats, and this is why you saw these 8 senators, these Democrat senators, cross the line. They were holding out initially. They wanted the Obamacare subsidies that have killed insurance in our country, health insurance. They wanted a permanent extension to the Obamacare subsidies, meaning you can't ever get rid of Obamacare. You can't really make any changes to Obamacare because they're going to fund that ad nauseum, right? So then they said, let's just get a year, because they knew they weren't going to get the permanent extensions. They wanted a year extension. That was their offer. They didn't get it, right? So there's no extension on Obamacare subsidies. That right there really broke the back of the Democrat Party. Okay. So in addition to that, what Trump has threatened to do is to convert those Obamacare subsidies into medical savings plans that he pushes back to the American people, bypassing who? The insurance companies. So you push that money back to the American people, you bypass the insurance companies, and guess what? Now the American people have the power. And there's going to be companies that are going to fight for your business to come and make a good offer to you. Because how does capitalism work? If you can offer a product at the fair price, and that gives you the best services for that price, you're going to win in a capitalistic society, right? You bypass these insurance companies, you turn around, you give the American people the money to go out and create a medical savings plan. You're going to get rid of a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse. You're going to bypass those insurance companies. You're going to break the back of Obamacare, which is destroying our healthcare. It's pretty much destroyed it already, right? So that's point number 2. Okay, we got 3 more to go. The third point is, I know a lot of people are poo-pooing this, but it's kind of brilliant, because Trump is sort of stuck. You know, he's at war with the Fed. You know, Trump allegedly wants to get rid of the Fed, which would be a boon. And I think everybody here is on the same page, right? So he has this 50-year mortgage because young people today can't afford homes. They can't afford homes. The way our parents, our grandparents, all of that, young people, I'm including myself, I'm not a young person, right? But young people today in their 20s cannot afford a home. So Trump is a little bit limited on what he can do, right? But what he could do is he could order the FHA to roll out a program that allows, this is one more thing. Remember, we talk about in the previous point, putting the power back in the hands of the people to make the right decision for their future, right? This is the same thing. He's rolling out a 50-year mortgage option. Everybody's going to say, oh, shit, that's terrible, because what have we seen? Look at the car industry. Look at how expensive cars, boats, and other things have become, and how expensive these things have become. And the answer is, oh, just finance it over years, right? Well, the difference between a car and a boat and a home is the home is going to appreciate in value. A car and a boat is going to depreciate in value. So stretching out your term for a car or a boat, an overpriced pickup truck with all the gizmos on it that you don't need, right? That cost $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 over multiple years is a stupid investment. But stretching out that loan on a home that's going to increase in value isn't so stupid. And here's where the beautiful part is. If you can afford to, you can double up payments and finish that loan in 25 years. And if you have a bad month, you can go back to the 50-year payment, right? It's actually a brilliant piece. And I see a lot of people poo-pooing this. This is something that is actually a good thing, because it's not perfect, but it's a way, it's an end run around everything that's going on. The Fed is intentionally keeping our interest rates high, right? And in states like Florida, what's going on, the housing prices are going up and up and up, especially with the election of Mandani in Florida. Now they're saying there's a max exodus of people from New York to these states. Just some you're going to scratch your head and say, what? New Hampshire, Tennessee, Georgia, Texas, Florida. And what they're going to do, in addition to all the pressure that's already on it because of the illegals we have here, you're going to push all these people that are coming out of New York that are worried about what's going on up there. We're not going to talk about New York, but there's a lot of stuff in the background going on. He's not going to be able to follow through on any of his plans. Not just because the guy ain't that bright, he's never done anything, right? But because the Democrats are going to block him from doing it. We'll talk about that at a later time. But this gives young people the power to stretch out your payment or your mortgage on a property that has value to a longer period of time, and it also gives you the power to pay it down faster if you're able to. Okay. Another thing he's doing is he is ordering the DOJ to do a collusion investigation into foreign meat packing plants. And this is surprising to me. Okay. 85% of the meat packing that's done in this country, right, are to foreign entities. And there's 4 or 5 of them. I don't have all the names off the top of my head, but they're from various places: Brazil, China, right? Smithfield's Foods, we talked about them before, it's China, right? I think there's a J or BSE or something. I think they're Brazilian. But anyways, 85% of U.S. beef processing is done with foreign-owned meat packing entities, right? So the price of ground beef is through the freaking roof. Something is up, and it's not the ranchers. People are blaming the ranchers. It's not the ranchers. It's these meat packing institutions. So Trump is ordering an investigation into collusion. And what is collusion? In a simplest term, collusion is these big organizations get together because they control the industry, right? And they say, we're going to set our pricing at this. If we set our pricing at this, you promise to set your pricing at it as well. And then we'll all reap huge profits. They catch them doing even the fear of an investigation. You're going to see these prices start to drop immediately. Because if you can push the narrative, it's the ranchers, that's easy for the public to buy, even though it's not true. So you're basically taking your sin and you're putting it on somebody else. So now that's not going to happen. There's going to be an investigation. It'll be very, very interesting to see how fast these prices start to drop and if anybody's indicted in this investigation. That's going to be interesting to see. Number 5, final, is prescription drugs. And basically, we know we've gotten screwed here forever because the drugs are invented here, the drugs are made here. Sometimes the drugs are shipped overseas and made somewhere else, right? And we pay the most for these drugs. And they're like, why would we pay the most for these drugs? Because we can, because we have organizations like Obamacare subsidies, where the taxpayers paying it. So people think, oh, well, you're not paying for it out of pocket. Many people aren't, but many people are. So there's ways for them to hide. If you see how they broke apart USAID and where all of this was going to, and the whole confusion behind that, we're all thinking it's US aid, right? Not knowing what it really was a front for, right? So it's the same way here. So he's going to reduce prescription drugs because he's going to force the pharmaceutical companies to charge people in the United States the same price as any of the lowest developed countries in the world. So this is a big change right here. He's done a lot of this before. Biden even took credit for some of the stuff that he did before he left office the first time. But this one right here, it's going to be huge. So the pharmaceutical companies can't soak the American consumer anymore. We're going to be paying the same price as the lowest price of any developed country in the world. So those are the 5 points that really broke the back of this of the Democrats. And the Democrats are at full-on war with one another. You see them all turning on Chuck Schumer, right? And they were the ones who forced him to do this in the first place, because he's worried about having somebody run for his seat named AOC, right? And there's even, I think, a local politician, an alderman or a councilman, that's now going to go after Hakeem Jeffries, Hakeem Jeffries' seat in the House. So there's a full-on war, right, within the Democrat Party, and Trump came out of this stronger. And the American people see, the American people are the people that weren't quite as on top of things, that are starting to get on top of things, are starting to see that that the Democrat Party is truly about destruction. It's not for serving the American people. And it isn't. It hasn't been for a long time. Until we start getting some, if, and I don't see it happening. If the more moderate wing of the Democrat Party would rise and take over, but you're not seeing that trajectory. You're seeing the opposite. You're seeing the big mouths. You're seeing the radical you're seeing the communists. Let's not even beat around the bush. Mandami, is that guy a democratic socialist, or is he really a communist? It's the same thing. Democrat socialist is a kinder, gentler term, right? Not to scare away the boomers that still cringe when they hear the word communism, right? So that's what we got going on with that. I don't know why John Fetterman has not just come on over and become a Republican, because he's the only Democrat in the Senate that seems like he's making any sense whatsoever. So switching everything back to domestic policy, which Trump has done here, is a stroke of brilliance. And it's going to give us momentum going into the midterms. We have to win the midterms. We have to win the midterms. Okay. Yes, Troy, you're 100% right. Big pharma equals drug cartel. That's right. The American drug cartel, right? Speaking of cartels, right? I'm segueing into this next subject here, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it's interesting. It's been reported that Mexican cartels, gangs, right, are offering a bounty, a $50,000 bounty, allegedly to shoot ICE agents, and a $2,000 bounty in order to get intel. The Democrats wanting to unmask everybody. They're doxing everybody and all of this, right? This is what they're trying to set up American patriots for. This is what they're doing. So I would say Mexican cartels, I'd say the Mexican government has lost control down there. We already know this, right? And I'm saying this right here is going to lead to the end of the Mexican cartels. Because if we do go after them militarily, they're done. They're going to be done. They're going to play around. They're going to play little games. They're going to do something like this and start offering money to shoot American citizens, American patriots, American federal agents, right? Just doing their job. Yeah. we don't have an administration that's going to sit around and allow that to happen. Thank God. Thank God. Okay, now we're going to get into all of the pipe bomb stuff. And so anybody who's just joining us, I want to apologize again. I want to apologize for Rumble. It always seems like we have a little problem here or there, right? I don't know what happened. This was all set up, and for some reason, there must be something over at Rumble. This is way more complicated than you think. When you set these up, these streaming platforms, when you go to put these things on, you have to have keys. And if you screw those keys up a little way, and even sometimes even don't screw the keys up in a little way, and everything isn't 100% perfect, you don't stream. And add to that, these developing platforms that haven't been around as long as YouTube, that are very, very good we speak very, very highly of Rumble and Odysee, quite frankly. But these platforms sometimes have their own technical issues. So you couple both of those together, and sometimes you have this. This right here is most likely operator error, and it's most likely operator error by yours truly. So I just want to apologize for that. We're trying to get a more professional show for you guys, and hopefully we'll get there. Hopefully we'll get there. So it looks like Odysee. Yeah, Odysee is up and running. For some reason, it's just Rumble. I get a little check mark for everything that's up there. And for Rumble, I have an exclamation mark. And when I hit on it, it's telling me it doesn't know what the hell's going on. Basically, they don't know what the issue is, but you're not broadcasting on Rumble. So I apologize for that. Let's get into the pipe bomb. Okay. I'm going to talk about, for this was a story broken by the Blaze. Right. And it's interesting. We all suspected something was going on. We all knew there was something really funny, because there was a pipe bomb laid outside the DNC. There was a pipe bomb laid outside the RNC. And it was suspected that these were done to draw the commander, the ultimate chief of the Capitol Police during January 6th. Seems like a really good guy. And he's the one that's actually not necessarily blown the whistle on this story, but in the past, Nancy Pelosi's behavior with not providing the National Guard. It turns out that the woman that was head of Intel, that was supposed to be reporting directly to him, wasn't giving him any information and was giving it to Nancy Pelosi. And that woman was taken and given the job at University of California, Berkeley, which I'm sure is a mega paying job. Right? Well, you're seeing another thing that's very familiar here. We're going to talk about three different people. The deputy chief, right? His name is Waldo. I'm not kidding you. Waldo, right? Or Waldo, right? The woman involved was a police officer for 3 to 4 years with the Capitol Police. What's very, very interesting about her is she walks with a permanent limp from an injury sustained when she played soccer in school, right? So she is a Capitol Police officer, and she's at she is the one alleged to have planted this via whistleblowers and place, right? Her name is Shawnee Kirkoff. Shawnee Kirkoff. What's interesting about Shawnee Kirkoff, like the other woman, I don't have her name right now, who was the head of Intel, that was not giving intel to the chief, right? Shawnee Kirkoff has gone on to bigger and greater things. Spends 3 to 4 years as a police officer with the Capitol Police, despite having a permanent limp. Wouldn't you say that that's a permanent injury, right? Permanent limp. So she's now with the CIA. She's now with the CIA, and allegedly with executive protection. So a female with a permanent limp is a cop for a few years, and then now is working in executive protection at the CIA, allegedly, right? Interesting, right? The third person I want to talk, his name is Stan Kephart. Stan Kephart is an expert on use of force, and this is going to become important as we get into this story, right? He has reviewed all the videos, almost everything there. This is why they hid all the videos for so long. And this is what eventually led to Tucker Carlson getting canned, because powerful people didn't want these videos being released. And Tucker Carlson was pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, right? So this guy, Stan Kephart, has reviewed the video. He's going to just give his opinion on it. He is an expert on use of force in law enforcement, okay? So on January 6th, now, and to preface this story, you have the deputy police chief who's calling the shots on the ground. This is this guy, Waldo, right? You have this woman, Shawnee Kirkoff. You're going to find out that on January 6th, she's up on this terrace, this elevated terrace, shooting people that were there on January 6th with less than lethal, okay? But the way they did this is going to come into play, okay? And the day before is allegedly the day that the pipe bomb was dropped off, right? And people had suspected, because there were people that analyzed the videos before, and it said it looks like the cops that were standing there when this thing was dropped off, because there were police there, it looked like they knew one another or made a gesture, like a nod or something, right? That's speculation. I don't know, okay? There's so much video that we haven't seen. There's a bunch that we have. It's all confused, right? So allegedly, the day before January 6th is when this thing was dropped off. January 6th, she's up on this elevated terrace with a bunch of other grenadiers, which are known, the Capitol Police, I guess, are known as, right? Basically shooting into the crowd with less than lethal. Many people suspect the way they were doing that was to get them all spun up. Wow, we found bombs everywhere, and taking a huge chunk of the Capitol Police and diverting them over to where these fake bombs were, right? So at about 12:30, Shawnee Kirkoff, at the direction, along with a bunch of other grenadiers, right, at the direction of Deputy Police Chief Waldo, who stated that he warned the crowd ahead of time, but video shows no bullhorn. So how could he warn the crowd without a bullhorn? Okay, from the elevated terrace on top of this. He gave the order for them to launch the less than lethal attack on the crowd that was down there. The question we all need to ask, were they rioting ahead of time? Or did they start rioting after the attack? People have testified to this. They didn't start losing their minds until after the attack, okay? And here's what's going to get important. Some of the devices they were using an FN, a product made by FN called the 303 launcher, okay? This thing pressures up to 3,000 PSI, right? And it shoots a 68 caliber. It can be a pepper ball or a kinetic round, right? So that's a big ass ball, right? And it shoots it at 300 feet per second. So, you know, we're gun guys here. 300 feet per second doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking about a 68 caliber ball, that turns something that is less than lethal. Depending on where you aim this, it could be potentially lethal. And we're going to talk about that with the expert. Okay. So they were using that. They were using 60 millimeter finned beanbag rounds. Primarily, these are shot from a shotgun, and the fins are to stabilize the round, so you have some sort of aim right with it. They were using another 40 millimeter less than lethal round. I'm not quite sure what that is. I'm familiar with a lot of this stuff. Pepper spray. But at 12:30, the command came down to start the attack on these people. Okay, and this is after people have already been diverted. And from what it has been testified, that they weren't doing anything. They were just standing there waving flags, right? And they started shooting from an elevated position with the less than lethal, and they were aiming for the neck, the face, the upper torso. Here's the first thing you learn when you learn about less than lethal. You want to shoot low because you don't want it to be potentially lethal, right? It's supposed to be pain compliance, right? So you don't shoot at the face, the head, the neck, the upper torso. You don't do it, right? So there's videos of 9 different people getting hit in the face, and a couple dudes having their cheeks blown out. So that had to have been a kinetic round, right? And this is what set the people off, right? And it's like they were trying to spin them up to do something. Okay. So once they did that, okay, they then transitioned, and there was hardly anybody down there to where there was a secure line that they weren't supposed to pass. They walked right through it. And then you saw all the videos. But before that, there were several areas where they were getting into it, and they were getting sprayed with pepper spray and hit with these beanbag rounds. They continued firing this into the crowd. Okay. And got them all spun up. And then you see them being led into the buildings. Right. Well, the individual who has reviewed the footage on this, who is a use of force expert, saying basically what I already told you: shooting from an elevated position with these kinetic and these paintball rounds, and especially aiming it at the head, the neck, the face, the upper torso, it is completely against regulations to do this. Right? And it is criminally, in his words, negligent. Okay? Criminal, because it could potentially cause fatal injuries. Right? That's the problem here. So did they start doing this? He said what he looked at, it looks like they were doing it not for crowd, but for punishment, is the way they were trying to administer this out. And there's a real problem with this. Because you got to get back to that question. Did they attack the January 6ers before or after they all started getting amped up? Right? I think many of us have a suspicion of when that was, right? And I think there's video out there to show when that was. We all know or suspect the reason why this had to happen was they couldn't have people challenging, and we had people, including Ted Cruz, that were going to challenge the results and push this back to the states. They couldn't do that. They couldn't have that done, right? So hence they needed something like this, and then something that they could use that same narrative that they were using on the shutdown, use the bullhorn of the mainstream media, use entertainment, use whatever method you can to push that narrative into everybody's head. Remember, they were saying that there were Capitol Hill police that were murdered at the time, and it turns out none of them were murdered. None of them were murdered. They were all, one had a stroke, others committed suicide, which is real odd. Isn't it funny around these situations that there's always law enforcement officers committing suicide, right? That's a story for another time. But when you look at this, you're starting to see this narrative get put together. We already know there's pieces where Nancy Pelosi and Muriel Bowser, the mayor of DC, both turned down National Guard troops. You can also see that they wouldn't authorize the police chief the use of National Guard troops when he was calling for them, right? Now you can see that there were people that were going around him, underneath him, the intel gal and this gal here, that have moved on to much bigger and better positions, right? And it's just very, very interesting because the American people are slowly seeing this whole thing being pieced together. They're slowly seeing this whole thing being pieced together. It's like a story in a puzzle coming together. And this is just one more element because, remember, they had everybody's information there using all of this technology, right? If you had your cell phone on you, they could track your ass down and harass you with FBI agents. The largest investigation in U.S. history. FBI investigation, right? They're tracking you down if you were there listening to the speech, whether you went in the Capitol or not. People that didn't go into the Capitol were given jail time. People were sitting in jails in D.C., not getting their due process in tiny, tiny little jail cells. Yes, accidentally on purpose, making things happen. Exactly, Troy, right? So you saw all of this going down. You saw all of this going down, but when you see it, when you see Ashley Babbitt Okay. And all charges being dropped against that individual. And I believe he's been promoted, right? And you see his history of leaving guns in restrooms and whatnot, right? Allegedly. And then you see the other woman that was beaten when she's unconscious on the ground and she's getting beaten by a female Capitol Police officer, right? You add all of these things up and you're like, what is going on? Even the normies are questioning everything that went down that day, right? So this is one more element, thanks to the blaze, thanks to some brave whistleblowers, thanks to the other parts of this story, the narrative, to the chief of police, the former chief of police, right? Because he seems like a stand-up dude, right? This is all starting to come out in the wash, guys. And I know we want to sit around and say things aren't happening as fast as they need to happen, okay? But things are happening, right? You're seeing Brennan's he's going to go down, right? Clapper, James Comey, right? The Walrus, right? John Bolton, right? You're seeing all of these shitbags, and more things are coming out every day. Things are happening. Trump is making things happen. Domestic policy and foreign policy. We need to get through the midterms. This economy is priming itself to explode if we can keep this up. Okay? We're sending illegals back in mass amounts, right? Even though we have these crooked, I say crooked, allegedly, judges getting in the way with these bogus rulings. All they're trying to do is delay. Just like the shutdown wasn't to benefit anybody. It was to impede and make Trump look bad and to try to get Trump's base to turn on him. They failed. They failed miserably. Trump is more popular now than ever, as he should be, right? We got to make sure that we keep our eye on the ball. We look back and we look at these elections, okay, that just happened in Virginia, New Jersey, and what was the third one? We had the proposition in California, right? We look at these elections and we look, oh, we lost. These are all heavily blue states. And there was some monkey business, if you know what I'm saying, involved. We all saw that. And the Democrats were riding high for a couple days until they had to cave on this scam of a shutdown. They had to cave on it. And this is fracturing this party from within. And you're seeing the civil war between the establishment and the radical Marxist left within that party, the AOC wing. So things aren't bad. We're going in the right direction. It's not happening as fast as we want it to, but it's happening. And we need to support this administration. Some of these ideas that he has come out with, he has handed it to the Democrats every time. We got the right guy in office. We need to support it. We need to win the midterms. Okay. So I'm going to wrap up with that, guys. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you all for being patriots. And I want to thank you all for having a little bit of grace and coming on over here to YouTube, the outlet that we always slag, rightly so, because we couldn't get Rumble to work. And like I said, I don't know why we couldn't get Rumble to work. It could be a Rumble issue. It could be a me issue. I don't know. But I appreciate you coming over here and hanging with us. I appreciate you being a patriot. We were going to see you next week. Oh boy, I meant to start the show with this, but all this, and how stupid of me. Happy Veterans Day to everybody out there. And Troy just reminded me. Happy Veterans. Thank you, Troy. Thank you for the reminder. And happy Veterans Day to everybody out there. Remember that. Okay. So stay strong. Live in freedom every day. You may have just me again next week. We'll see. Stu has to do some traveling, and we don't know how it's going to happen. But you might just get me again next week. Hopefully, we're not going to have the same issue. But I appreciate you guys. I love the input. I love the fact that you guys take part in this show, take part being a patriot of this country. live in freedom every day. We will see you next time. Thanks, guys.